I posted this on Telegram, but I wanted to cover it on the show. So there's this Aboriginal term here, Makaratta, or I don't know exactly how you pronounce it, Makarrata, something like that, is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations for a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for children, blah, 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 right? Now, this is the Uluru Statement from the Heart. For those of you who don't know what it is the official document from which this idea of the voice to parliament and treaty and reparations and all these things are derived. Now, when I read the Uluru Statement from the Heart, I saw this and thought, okay, it's just some Aboriginal gibberish term. I didn't think anything of it. But then I saw this. This was posted. I don't know who. I can't remember who dug it up. Some guy on Twitter dug it up. It says here, in 1981, the Australian Senate Standing Committee on Constitutional and Legal Affairs began an inquiry into the feasibility, whether by way of constitutional amendment or other legal means, of securing a compact or Makarrata between the Commonwealth Government and Aboriginal Australians. Following a visit by the committee to northeastern Arnhem Land, Senator Alan Misson sought the advice of his colleague, Senator Peter Baum, who was then Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, on the term Makarrata. At Yirrkala, it seems, Aboriginal elders had informed the committee that Makaratta was a completely inappropriate choice because the word means payback, i.e. revenge, and does not necessarily imply forgiveness or the end of a quarrel. Now, this is from back in the 80s. The Aboriginals were like, well, we're not saying we want revenge on you guys or anything. We just we want an agreement. So yeah, this is a definition here. The Makaratta is a ceremonial peacemaking fight, is a kind of general duel and partial ordeal which allows the aggrieved parties to vent their feelings by throwing spears at their enemies or by seeing the latter's blood run in expiation. Frequently, the Makaratta does not follow the ideal pattern. Instead of providing a peacemaking mechanism, it produces only another battle in the interminable blood feud of the clans. So this is what the Aboriginal Statement of the Heart wants, or is ultimately its goal, the Uluru Statement from the Heart. This is what the voice is about. This is what the entire agenda is about. It's about revenge. We took this country from the Aboriginals, and now they want revenge. That's bad. They want it back. We got to pay the rent. We need some bloodletting of the white man for what we took from them. And this is, if they want to declare themselves a separate nation and demand the country back, well, why don't we just have another war? Why does the Australian government say, okay, you're a different country, we'll fight it out. We'll declare war on you, and we'll fight until we come to some kind of stalemate, and then we'll have a treaty. Then we'll negotiate a treaty. Then that's generally how these things work. If you declare that this is actually your country, not our country, you're challenging the sovereignty of the government. You're supposed to have a war, but of course they don't want that because we would just destroy them in a war very easily. We'd win in a matter of days. We'd win instantly, essentially. And so they've got it's a psychological war instead. Instead, it's this operation where you've got a bunch of Jews and communists and all these nefarious figures all coming together to push through this agenda and hoodwink the Australian people.
That's the thing, though, is do the Aboriginal people really want this? And when we say the Aboriginal people, who are we even talking about exactly? Are we talking about the black fellas that live up in Darwin? I don't think they give a shit about this. All they seem to want to do is drink and lay in the sun all day. So who's pushing this agenda and why are they pushing it? Like, it just seems to be some sort of land grab, power grab, denationalization, and what do they call it? Redistribution of power generally, not by Aboriginals, but by some sort of special interest political group, probably Marxists or communists, right? Or people who, go by that name today. So I don't think the actual Aboriginals give a shit about this. My cousins live up in Katherine, which is a town in Northern Territory, and they repair homes. They're carpenters that repair government homes that are supplied in various areas to Aboriginal communities. They've told me some stories too, believe me. But yeah, the Aboriginals up there, the actual Aboriginals, the full bloods, mate, they haven't got a second to think about or care about any of this shit, believe me. So you've really got to think about who's pushing it and why, because I think the Aboriginal people and them being victims and pay the rents and, reconciliation. And I think all of this stuff is fake. I don't think it's about helping Aboriginal people, because if you think about it, the whole process of paying your respects to the traditional owners of the land, the kind of stuff you get bombarded with everywhere you go these days. It started off as like a respect thing. And most Australians didn't really bat an eyelid because they're like, yeah, I suppose like they've been here a long time and maybe they had a bit of a rough go. So yeah, we'll tolerate that. We'll acknowledge that. It went from being a respect thing to just pathetic pandering. Now it's just pandering. That's what it feels like. It feels weak. The people who make the statements about the traditional owners of the land, they just appear weak and pandering. They don't even want to do it anymore. They have to do it because it's part of some sort of government initiative or program, and it's required for people to do it now. And it's always better to be mean than weak, right? It's better to be mean than weak. Remember that. Basically, anything's better than being weak. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the whole thing is obviously a bit of a...
But yeah, I mean, the sovereignty is foundational to the legitimacy of a government. So if you have a group of people that are challenging that directly, you say, well, usually what you do, if you're an actual proper country, you say, okay, well, are you going to go to war with us or are you going to back off? Like that's literally what the response is supposed to be in a normal country. So that's what I would say. Like if I was prime minister, I'd say, okay, well, do you think this is your country? Okay, well then, we'll fight over it. Then let's see who wins. If you can beat us, it's yours, and that's how you sort it out.
Yeah, I agree.
Simple as that.
But if it really was about that, then that might be the conclusion, the inevitable conclusion that you come to. But obviously, it's not about that. It's about probably taking land away from farmers based on cultural sensitivity legislation and giving it to the government, right? It's stuff like that. That's what's going to come of bills like this, like the Voice and, pay the rent, reconciliation, anything to do with Aboriginal people. Aboriginal people up in the real Aboriginals, they're going to benefit nothing from any of this. They will benefit nothing. The government's just going to end up with more land and more power. And that's what it's about. Like, come on.
Well, I mean, even if they do, I think some of them will benefit. I mean, some of them will rot off it. Obviously, all these people that have to be approved, like what the story that we covered the other week in Western Australia, where these Aboriginal elders need to be kind of consulted whether you can do anything on your own land. Like all these farmers are now subject to it, and you've got to pay them all these consultancy fees and so on. We're going to see. We already have so much of that already, even without the Voice, and we're only going to see that continue to proliferate because no one can say no because it's racist or whatever, and that's the future of this country. But yeah, a lot of it is spiritual demoralization and things like this, and the Voice will be used to do all kinds of, if it gets through, which hopefully it doesn't. I think we can win the referendum, but they'll just pass it through legislation. It'll be used to do and push all kinds of nonsense through the government.
I got to say, like, you don't have to hate Aboriginal people. I don't hate them. I don't really feel any particular way about them. I just want to get on with my life and take care of my family, right? And everyone should have the same opportunity. No one is under any obligation to provide any sort of assistance or feel any empathy or sympathy for Aboriginal people. You can if you want to. It's up to you. But don't let government forces impose this sort of stuff on you. Don't let government initiatives and bureaucrats and media journalists and so forth tell you how you have to feel about Aboriginal people, right? And tell you that you have to take stances on this kind of thing, because you don't have to take a stance, right? You got to look at things how they are sometimes, and really no one's under any obligation or responsibility. We're not responsible for them, just as they're not responsible for us. And that's the way I've always looked at it. I don't see how that's
if they want to have their own communities and like they got it up in Arnhem Land and whatever, go nuts. But then don't ask us for anything. Like you run it your way and you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. That's the only proper approach. But yeah, so anyway, send a super chat, powerchat.live/Joel Davis, and we'll